Meanwhile, the president is gearing up for his first official overseas trip as commander-in-chief.
His first stop is the United Kingdom tomorrow. And joining us now with more insight on the trip and the politics ahead, Washington Post reporter Tyler Page. Tyler, thanks for being with us. Is this a signal that the United States is moving away from this America First mentality and is more of a cooperative spirit? And how is that being received?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And that's exactly right. That is something that Biden ran on as a candidate for president, is trying to restore American leadership on the global stage, someone who deeply believes in international institutions and multilateralism. And this trip is an affirmation of that, meeting with the G7 and then the European Union before he heads to this meeting with Vladimir Putin to try to show that America is aligned with its allies in Western Europe and around the world. And very much so, this is something that the president has long believed in, as he was a senator, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and as vice president, someone who was dispatched around the world to build alliances and work on global issues as an envoy of President Obama. And so this is his first time as the country's leader heading to his first foreign trip to try to make the case that America can restore its alliances and move beyond the America First policy that was the signature of former President Donald Trump.
And what does he need to do? How were these relationships bruised during that administration?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that administration officials have talked about that they want that the president will seek to do is restore trust with allies and enter into agreements and find compromise to work on global issues, whether that relates to the coronavirus and distributing vaccines around the world, or related with the EU allies in terms of the drawdown of troops in Afghanistan, or a united front against Russian aggression in certain parts of the world, or building in terms of talking about China and North Korea or other threats that the U.S. sees around the globe, trying to form partnerships and build these alliances to respond to growing threats. And that is what I think we'll see distinguish a lot of the conversations that the president will have in the week ahead.
The other threat has to do with the environment. The president got the United States back into the Paris Climate Accord. Is there a sense that something meaningful can now be achieved to restore the environment?
Yeah, that's obviously one of the crises that the president had identified early on in his administration. He convened a virtual summit of leaders around the world to talk about climate. That is an expectation that will come up in the G7 and the European Union meetings in the next week. What they might agree on or the details of any sort of agreement, I think we're waiting to see as they usually announce those over the course of the summits. But you can be assured that is something that the president has sought to find international agreement and cooperation on. And as we've seen, he's named John Kerry to lead that effort. And so that will definitely be a topic of conversation in the conversations in the next week.
Can we talk a little bit about the infrastructure issues, the impasse that's going on there in the White House, or in Washington, I should say? Where does that stand, and can anything be moved before he goes on this trip?
Yeah, so that's the big question, is what's the next step and then the path forward in these ongoing negotiations. Today, the president announced that they were no longer continuing negotiations with Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, who was the GOP lead negotiator on the issue. But now in Washington tonight, a group of bipartisan senators met for almost 3 hours in the Capitol trying to hammer out a bipartisan deal to push the infrastructure package forward. It remains unclear whether or not they're going to be able to find compromise. Over the past few weeks, the president has been negotiating with just Republicans. Now there's a new group of Democrats and Republicans trying to find a deal. The president leaves for his foreign trip early tomorrow morning, so we won't see any substantive progress before then, but the president has dispatched cabinet members and senior White House officials to lead those negotiations as he's overseas. And Senator Mitt Romney of Utah, who's part of those bipartisan negotiations, said we should expect to see some public proposal from that bipartisan group in the next week or two. And that'll be the marker of whether or not there is a path forward on bipartisan negotiations, or whether the White House will just go with reconciliation, which just requires Democrats to stay together and pass this legislation.
Okay, thank you, Tyler Pager, who is the White House correspondent for Washington Post. We appreciate it. Be safe, be well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.